Remember when we drank from the garden hose? I want you to remember that taste for a second. It wasn't filtered. It wasn't chilled in a BPA-free plastic bottle that cost $20. It was hot water sitting in a green rubber tube baking in the July sun. It tasted like metallic vinyl and dirt. And to us, in the middle of a sweating, running, screaming summer afternoon, it tasted like the finest champagne in the world. We rode bikes without helmets. We didn't have knee pads. We didn't have elbow pads. We wore shorts and t-shirts, and if you fell, which you did often, you left a piece of your skin on the asphalt. You bled. You cried for about 30 seconds. Maybe you ran home and your mum put that stinging red stuff, mercurochrome on it, blue on it, and told you to get back outside. And you did. We stayed out until the streetlights came on. That was the rule. There were no cell phones. There were no GPS trackers sewn into our backpacks. There was no Find My Friends app. If our parents wanted to know where we were, they had to look out the window or wait for our stomachs to growl. I'm Linda. I'm 74 years old. And looking around today, I realize I lived through a unique window in human history. I was a free-range kid. And if you're listening to this, chances are you were too. And we need to talk about that. Because we survived. Not only did we survive, we thrived. But something has changed. Let's go back to a Saturday morning in 1968. You woke up, you poured yourself a bowl of cereal that was 90% sugar. You watched cartoons for 2 hours and then you were ejected. The door opened and you were told, go play. Think about those 2 words. Go play. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a command. And it wasn't a play date. We didn't have play dates. Our mothers didn't call other mothers to schedule a 2-hour window of supervised interaction with snacks provided. You just walked out the door. You walked to the neighbor's house and knocked on the door. Can Susan come out? If Susan couldn't come out, you went to the next house. You formed a pack. A roving gang of 8-year-olds on Schwinn bicycles with banana seats and baseball cards clothespin to the spokes to make them sound like motorcycles. We owned the neighborhood. The streets, the woods, the vacant lots. They were our kingdom. And in that kingdom, we were the queens and kings. There were no adults. This is the part that young people today can't wrap their heads around. We could go 4, 5, 6 hours without seeing a single adult. We were completely autonomous. We built forts out of rusty scrap metal and stolen plywood. We climbed trees that were definitely too high, ruining our good clothes. We threw rocks at hornets' nests just to see what would happen, and we found out what happened, and we ran like hell. We played games that had no referees. If there was a dispute over whether the ball was in or out, we didn't look to a parent to solve it. We shouted at each other, we bargained. Sometimes we shoved each other. And then, 5 minutes later, the game continued. We learned the physics of the world not from a textbook, but from the bruises on our shins. We learned that if you build a ramp out of a cinder block and a piece of warped wood and you hit it at full speed on a bike, gravity is going to teach you a lesson. I remember the silence of the house in the summer, no air conditioning, just the hum of a box fan in the window. The phone was attached to the wall in the kitchen with a 20-foot cord. If you wanted to talk to a boy, you had to call his house and risk his mother answering. You had to have courage just to dial the rotary phone. There was no texting. There was no hiding. You had to speak up. We were bored. Lord, we were bored. And that is something we have stolen from the new generation. We have stolen their boredom. Today, if a child is bored for 3 seconds, a screen is shoved in their face. But in 1970, boredom was the mother of invention. Boredom is what made us build a raft to float down the creek. Boredom is what made us invent games with complex rules involving a jump rope and a driveway. Boredom forced us to look inward and create our own entertainment. We felt the weather. We didn't live in climate-controlled bubbles. We played in the dirt. We got grass stains that never came out. We smelled like sweat and outside. There is a specific smell to a child who has been outside for 8 hours. It's a mix of sun, dirt, and freedom. We rode in the back of station wagons, in that rear-facing seat, making faces at the cars behind us. No seat belts. We slid across the vinyl bench seats when Dad took a sharp turn. I'm not saying that was safe, science tells us it wasn't, but I am saying it made us aware of the road. We were part of the journey. We had access to danger, real danger. We had matches. We climbed fences with rusty nails. And because we had access to danger, we learned respect. We learned that fire burns. You can't learn respect for danger if you are never allowed to touch it. I look back at that 10-year-old girl, me, and I see someone who was small, but she felt big. I felt capable. If I scraped my knee 3 miles from home, I walked home. I didn't call Uber. I didn't call Mom. I dealt with it. That feeling, that I can deal with it feeling, is the foundation of everything I became as a woman. And I deeply worry, that we are raising a generation that has never had to walk home alone. Somewhere along the line, the world changed. The free-range childhood died, and the era of the helicopter parent began. It didn't happen overnight. It was a slow creep. It started with the 24-hour news cycle. Suddenly, every tragedy, every kidnapping, every accident that happened anywhere in the country was beamed into our living rooms all day and night. Our parents, the greatest generation, and the silent generation, they didn't watch 24-hour news. They read the evening paper. They knew the world had sharp edges, but they didn't live in constant terror of them. But then, fear became a commodity. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Suddenly, the neighborhood wasn't a kingdom anymore. It was a minefield. The woods weren't a place of adventure. They were a place where danger lurked. The street wasn't for playing ball. It was for cars. We went from be home by dark to I need to see you at all times. I go to the park now, and I sit on a bench, and I watch. I see mothers hovering over children who are trying to climb a 2-foot ladder. Be careful, honey. Watch your step. Not too high. The kid looks back at the mother for approval before he makes a move. He's being trained to doubt his own body. He's being trained to look for external permission before taking a risk. We didn't have that. If I climbed a tree and got stuck, my dad wasn't standing at the bottom shouting instructions. I was alone. I had to figure out where to put my foot. I had to manage my own fear. I had to learn that if I go up, I have to be able to come down. Today, we have sanitized childhood. We have rubberized the playgrounds. We have removed the seesaws because they might pinch a finger. We have removed the merry-go-rounds because a kid might get dizzy and fall. We have wrapped our children in bubble wrap physically and emotionally. We don't let them loose. Have you noticed this? We have participation trophies. We have everyone is a winner. In my day, if you didn't make the team, you didn't make the team. You sat on the porch and you cried. And that feeling, that bad feeling, that was fuel. That was the reason you practiced for 3 hours the next day. If you remove the possibility of failure, you remove the possibility of growth. You cannot have one without the other. And let's talk about the digital leash, the cell phone. It is the greatest tool for anxiety ever invented. Parents track their kids' location dots on a map. They text them 10 times a day. Where are you? Who are you with? When will you be home? There is no mystery left. There is no space to get into a little bit of trouble and get yourself out of it. We had the latchkey kids. Remember that phrase? I was one. I came home at 3:00 p.m., let myself in with a key I wore on a shoelace around my neck. The house was empty. I made a sandwich. I did my homework, or I didn't. I watched TV. People today call that neglect. They say it's terrible, but let me tell you what it actually was. It was trust. My parents trusted me not to burn the house down. They trusted me to handle 3 hours of autonomy. And because they trusted me, I learned to trust myself. I learned how to be alone without being lonely. Today, kids are never alone. They are constantly connected, constantly supervised, constantly entertained. And we wonder why anxiety rates are through the roof. We wonder why they crumble when they get to college and their roommate eats their yogurt. They have never had to manage a conflict without an adult mediator. We had fights, real fights, hair-pulling and shouting matches in the schoolyard. I'm not glorifying it, but I am telling you, there is something primal about standing up for yourself. You get your feelings hurt, you cry, you wipe your face, and you realize, I didn't die, I'm still here. You make up. You earn respect. Now, if a kid looks at another kid the wrong way, the school calls a summit meeting. We bring in counselors. We label it bullying immediately. We intervene. We solve the problem for them. We are robbing them of the social immune system they need to survive the adult world. The adult world doesn't have safety nets. The adult world doesn't care if you're triggered. The adult world is hard. And by making childhood soft, we are sending lambs into a slaughterhouse. I'm not saying we should go back to everything. We don't need lead paint. We don't need cars without seatbelts. Those safety improvements are good, but we have confused safety with comfort. Safety is keeping a child from dying. Comfort is keeping a child from struggling. We need to stop confusing the two. Struggle is good. Struggle is necessary. The butterfly needs to struggle to get out of the cocoon, or its wings will never be strong enough to fly. We are cutting the cocoon open for our kids, and then we are surprised when they can't get off the ground. So, what was the result of all that drinking from hoses and falling off bikes? What did it actually build in us? It built resilience. It built a kind of internal armor. When I look at my generation, the boomers and even the Gen Xers who came after us, I see people who know how to solve problems. We are the MacGyver generation. Give us a roll of duct tape and a screwdriver, and we'll fix the problem. Why? Because we had to. When we were out on those bikes, 5 miles from home, and the chain popped off, there was no YouTube tutorial. There was no dad coming with a truck. You looked at the chain. You got grease on your hands. You figured out the tension. You fixed it. That simple act, fixing the chain, wired our brains for solution seeking. It taught us that the world is mechanical, causal, and fixable. Today, when a phone breaks, you can't fix it. It's a sealed black box. You throw it away and get a new one. We are moving from a culture of fixes to a culture of replaces. And that applies to relationships, jobs, and hardships too. We have staying power. We endured boring teachers, mean nuns, and long summers with nothing to do. We learned patience. We learned that satisfaction isn't instant. I remember saving money for a record player. It took me a year. I babysat for 50 cents an hour. I walked dogs. I kept my money in a jar. When I finally walked into the store and bought that machine, I loved it more than anything I own today. I earned it. When you give a child everything instantly, you steal the joy of earning. You steal the value of the object. We also have a realistic view of authority. Our parents weren't our friends. Let me repeat that. Our mothers were not our best friends. They were mothers. They were the law. We feared them a little bit, didn't we? The look from Mom across the dinner table was enough to stop you in your tracks, because they weren't trying to be our best buddies. They could actually parent us. They could say no. No is the most important word a child can hear. No, you can't have that. No, you can't go there. No, you have to do your chores. We learned that the world doesn't revolve around our desires. We learned duty. We learned obligation. And I think, most importantly, that free-range childhood gave us a connection to reality. We touched the world. We climbed the trees. We swam in the muddy creeks. We caught fireflies in jars. We weren't observing life through a screen. We were in it. We were dirty, exhausted, and alive. I worry about the future. I really do. I see young people who are brilliant, truly brilliant, but they are fragile. They shatter under pressure. They are terrified of making a mistake. They are terrified of saying the wrong thing. We weren't afraid to be wrong. We were wrong all the time. We did stupid things. We jumped off swings thinking we would fly. We were idiots. But we were brave idiots. And that bravery is what built this country. It's what built the businesses, the families, the communities. You cannot build anything of value if you are afraid of getting hurt. So, here is my message to you, my fellow survivors of the garden hose generation. Don't let anyone tell you that you were neglected. Don't let anyone tell you that our parents were bad. They were preparing us. They were hardening us off, like a tomato plant before you put it in the garden. They knew that winter was coming, and they wanted us to be ready. And to the younger parents listening, I know you love your kids. I know you want to protect them. But the best protection you can give them is a little bit of danger, a little bit of freedom. Let them walk to the store. Let them scrape their knees. Let them resolve their own arguments. Let them be bored. Take the phone away. Kick them out of the house on a Saturday morning and lock the door. Tell them to go play. They might hate you for it in the moment, but 20 years from now, when life hits them hard, and it will hit them hard, they will have the strength to stand up. We are the last of the free-range kids. We carry the memory of a time when the world was big and wild and ours to discover. Let's not let that memory die with us. Teach your grandkids how to drink from the hose. It tastes like metal and dirt and victory. I'm Linda. Thanks for listening. Now turn this off and go outside.